Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Wehrenfenning. I'm from UC Irvine, originally from Germany, so my accent is probably still there. I promised my wife I get rid of my accent when Schwarzenegger is out of office. Didn't happen, so I'm still working on it. So I am coming to this wonderful conference. I'm thanking a friend for us and Miriam to invite me here to speak to all of you about something that's really my passion, peace. Though I come from an academic background, we normally get an hour and a half, and use 2. So now I have 20 minutes. So I have a choice to make, and I need your vote of confidence or not. Do you want to hear the academic or the activist talk? Oh my gosh, I knew it. Okay, so, well, then I have to disappoint and maybe not disappoint you, because I will tell you that these are not 2 different choices, and I'll tell you why in a couple seconds. So I'll give you the academic activist talk now. The building of bridges and divided communities is, I think, somehow the topic. I put the divided communities in because I work on peace building. I work on citizen dialogue. That's my background. I studied a lot in the Middle East. That's where I'm currently working, and I will, if I have enough time, tell you more about a program that I'm running right now. It's called the Olive Tree Initiative, bringing students from now 6 different UC campuses to the Middle East, pro-Israeli, pro-Palestinian, in-between students, all religion, all ethnicities, bring them to the conflict, learn on the ground, meet all the people. Quite exciting, and no sleep for 3 weeks. But I wanted to share a little bit how I got to this topic and what's the importance of it, and how the Middle East international conflicts connect to us here. And so I try to give you a little bit of an academic background based on my PhD work, and then go right into activism. So I studied what's called citizen dialogue. There are a lot of names, and if you know academics well, we are really world experts in making up new terms, because every thesis needs a new term, and if you want to be somebody in our world, you need to make up a new term. So citizen dialogue, I didn't quite make it up, but it's one of these terms that float around there that describe, and so that's why I put a definition there, the involvement of citizen, so all of us here, in the mission of peace building. And because peace is a big term, and I think this conference and this wonderful program showed that it has all these different facets. I really look at peace in two of the most complicated international conflicts. As I said, Northern Ireland, which it's on its way of solving the issue of conflict towards a more sustainable peace process, and the Middle East, where we have a lot more work to do. So the idea of citizen dialogue is to support by all of us, through certain actions, the negotiation, the official peace process that should be going on in any kind of conflicts if you want to go from a conflict stage to a solving stage. That's not the only work, but that's kind of where it starts. And later on, as you may all know, when you talk about reconciliation, it's quite a different topic. As it's nice to have people making peace on stage, shaking hands, but you need to reconcile the people who have been divided for many, many years, have lost loved ones and all of that. So that takes quite a little bit more. But in the first stages, and now we talk about especially like Northern Ireland or the Middle East, we need to figure out first how to also aid the official peace process in some ways. So here's the most academic slide of my talk, and the most confusing. I just had to do it. This is what we do in political science, where I'm teaching right now. We describe the different involvement of citizens in the peace process. I mean, it's obviously a big area. And so they're just roughly, this is a really rough schedule, rough graphic even. They're kind of ways that citizens involve behind the scenes, which we call back channel talks. So citizens are the connection between party A and party B in a conflict. And they do it secretly. They're the ones who provide the links, when official people cannot talk, governments cannot talk, the citizens behind the scenes do it. Then they're more officially involved with working with the official leadership, what we call, track 1.5. Track 1 is when just the politicians talk. Then they work, just as we just heard a wonderful presentation here, on a civil society level, dealing with issue of housing crisis, human rights, a lot of different ways, and they try to work with the other side on these issues. And then they're just grassroots people, like a lot of your students here, who are just studying, who live in a conflict, who have been affected by it, and find out some ways to get involved in solving the issue. So that's what comes my whole scholarship in, which I could talk about 5 hours and just scratch the surface of about 300 interviews I did with people to find out what did they do in a conflict, how did they, citizens, contribute to peace, how did they think they were effective, where did they fail, why was Northern Ireland successful and the Middle East failed ultimately. A lot of good questions I cannot answer right now, but I will present some of my findings because that leads me into the work that I'm doing right now and it has affected us here. So some of the things you'll learn in this big field of citizen involvement. First, and that's very important, and that should be an inspiration to all of us, it works. Citizen involvement works, is important, and in both areas, the Middle East, Northern Ireland, without citizen involvement, there would have not been a peace process in the first place. Citizens were behind the peace process in Northern Ireland, starting it, and they were behind the peace process in the Middle East, starting it and sustaining it to a certain momentum. And they are very important, and no matter what the politicians do and how much they believe they can handle things themselves, and we need them, they cannot solve a conflict by themselves. So citizens, we need to be involved. There's no way to stay out of it. And people living in these conflict regions know that. They're just very disappointed right now sometimes that they tried a lot and not seeing a future to move forward. So number one, we need to do it. It's important. Number two, what I found in my studies, and I love to get some questions about it more specifically or come up later to me. You can do a lot, but it needs to be strategic. Probably, I don't know how many wonderful organizations we have here. And if we work on a certain area or topic together, we need to strategize. We need to find out what is the first thing we want to tackle. You know, there's so much division and conflict out there and so many people who don't like peace. The people who work towards them have to be strategically meeting each other, working things out and have a strategy. And in Northern Ireland, they were able to do it and had an amazing impact. In the Middle East, they were not. You know, the Middle East had a lot of activities on the peace side, but unfortunately they did not really strategize or work out a long-term plan. And so a lot of the things that fall apart, which is called the negative issues and words that are used today, the peace industry or the dialogue is a very negative term right now in the Middle East, was because they were not coordinating it. And when you were in the 80s and in the early 90s in the Middle East, you could give $1 million if you were an Israeli Palestinian and willing to talk with each other. And that's a good thing if you want to have $1 million, is a bad thing if you really want to sustain the peace process. So there's a lot of issue about strategy. Linkages, connecting us, civil society, with political leadership, with community leadership, very, very important. And I know a lot of us very often are not really happy what we see if the political leaders make decisions or do one thing or the other, but there is no way around that they still are elected and they still have certain powers. And so we need to be involved in communicating with them and pushing them towards the things that we want them to do, which is in our case, making peace. So in the Middle East, again, there's a big, big gap that the people on the ground are not connected with their politicians. They don't like each other, they don't communicate, they actually distrust each other. Northern Ireland, I learned again how citizen people, academics, community leaders, organizations were really able to put a lot of pressure on their politicians to move the direction they wanted to. Ongoing interaction. One of my key things that I found is if you want to do peace, peace is not an outcome, it's a process. And probably 2 people at least have said that today. If not, I'm disappointed. It's not an easy thing. I mean, what is peace? You know, we have to describe it. It's a process. And the process means there needs to be some kind of ongoing element. One of the key things, it's like a friendship. If you want to make peace, if you want to bring 2 divided society together, you need to build ongoing interaction between people who are divided. And if you don't do that, then it becomes void at some point where people just ask, why are we talking at all? You know, if you only talk of things that are going well, if you stop talking of things that are not going well, I mean, what kind of friendship is that? What's kind of the basis of our conversation or trust? And that's happening, unfortunately, again, in the Middle East. The Middle East people are amazing when things are going well. They all talk. They talk all the time. They go on conferences. They love to do things together. Things are going bad, they stop talking. They stop communicating. They see no need for it. And that's a big, big issue. And in Northern Ireland, again, this is not black and white, apples and orange in a certain way. But in Northern Ireland, they were able to have this idea that when things go bad, we may meet to talk more. You know, if things go not as well, if people are shot at the street or kneecapped or there's community violence, we may need to talk more. And especially right now, in a context of separation and segregation, which we have a lot in Israel-Palestinian conflict, where people cannot see each other, cannot meet each other, there are walls physically, psychologically, People need to communicate, to build these trust, to build these relationships. So, and then the last one, proactively, that goes too much in my thesis. There's a need also for a vision and for people in civil society, for people who are not officials, to proactively create a vision of peace and move forward to it and not just wait for things from the outside to happen. So this is this is all good, it all works, though what do we have to deal with? Now we have to be realistic when we talk about peace. It's nice to have these great ideas. And I just write down some of the 3 major issues that is in the way of peace in the Middle East right now. That's the biggest things we need to find out to solve that. And I just picked the Middle East because it's a hard thing to deal with. How do you create citizen involvement if people do not and cannot meet each other? If you divide it, separate it, segregate it. That is one of the toughest things. Right now, since 2000, since the beginning of the Second Intifada, virtually the Palestinian-Israeli society are divided in many ways you can think about. Even that it's so close. I mean, going from Jerusalem to Bethlehem is it's next door. People were shopping all over the place, have the mechanics in different areas. There were so much interaction going on for many, many years, but right now it's completely divided. Most people under the age of 15 in both societies have never met somebody from the other side if you're not a soldier or, quote unquote, a terrorist that we see on TV. So there's a completely distrust, no connection, and separation, segregation, which is obviously very, very challenging that somebody tells me we can make peace with another side if I never meet them, if I never saw them, if I was never kind of any connection. Number 2, history of violence. It's good to talk the abstract of violence, but if you lost people, loved ones, if you have gone through trauma yourself, if you go in your home and there's a wall with plaque pictures of all the loved ones in your family, and I'm not talking about 100 years ago, I'm talking the last 50 years who have been lost in this conflict. If you live in an area where names of streets are named after people dying in this conflict for your kind of cause, violence is all over the place. It's in your memory, it's in your house, it's everywhere you are. So overcoming this kind of internal blockage to meet the other side, to moving towards peace in a context of violence and personal loss is a big, big challenge. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, one of the key things that people unfortunately do not talk enough about in the Middle East. Right now we have a significant amount of the population, especially the young population, who are, in major terms, or at least small terms, have some kind of PTSD. Many kids cannot sleep at night, wetting in their beds. There's a lot of studies been done just based on the conflict or the insecurity, on the environment of living near cities where you have to run into bomb shelters where things are happening. And so even sometimes if you want to meet another person, but you really have extreme PTSD, so there's a physical blockage even internally, it's a medical thing to even not allow you to move forward. So that causes a ton of issues in terms of your voting pattern, in your kind of ability to trust, and a lot of things that we have to work towards and kind of overcome in order to go and talk about peace building again in the Middle East. It's a tough thing to do. Last thing, just as an example, many people say, what's the worst thing than a no peace process? A failed one. Unfortunately, in the Middle East now, and I just again use the Middle East to give us a context of the challenge we face, we have a failed peace process. So you have a lot of people who invested everything, their whole livelihood, their reputation, who they are, what they stand for, what you can imagine, to being peace builders, and they got smacked down. They got, they were called traitors, they gave up a lot, and now they're kind of ostracized in their society. They don't matter anymore. Parties that existed to were just, putting up on their flag to run for peace, to bring change, are not existing as much anymore, or really weak. So it's a big, big challenge to get people involved after they said we tried it all. Secondly, motivation. My first interview I did in the Middle East was probably my most telling. And they said, when you don't want to be a peace builder, you need to really be honest with each other about your motivation. And the person told me that story, so I need to tell it because it's very significant. They said, why do you believe that Israelis communicate or dialogue with Israelis? And I said, I don't know. Obviously, it's a rhetorical question, so you always have to say, I don't know. And they said, Israelis communicate with Palestinians so that they can better sleep at night. So Israelis communicate with Palestinians so to show that there's a humanity, that they care for the Palestinians. Despite what the government does, they really care. They are humans and they see the other side as humans, so they want to be involved with them. And then they asked me, why do you think Palestinians communicate with Israelis? so the Israelis cannot better sleep at night. Palestinians communicate with Israelis so that they care, that they will mobilize, that they will lobby their government, that they stand outside every day, advocate to their government to change the situation for the Palestinians on the ground. So the motivation for citizen dialogue, for peace building, to getting together is very different in these two societies. And if you're not honest about that, then you're getting in a moment where you do a process and doing things, and you're not really getting involved with each other for the right reasons. And at some point they said, why do we do all of that? So these are just challenges. So now I'll give you some solution, or some of the things that I found to talk about. Obviously, we need more dialogue. And there's wonderful new projects of using modern technology. You can look it up. There's a group like Yella and others. So in a time of separation, segregation, new technology that doesn't accept boundaries as we know them are really helpful. Teaching history. In a time when people don't see each other, a lot of the responsibility falls on teachers and history teaching in the society on each side to change that, to kind of build a more positive picture about others. And I hope that some governments who help to give a lot of money to either government can push them to have a better history of the other side to really help a new generation to not hate each other more than they need to. And then obviously creating situations where people can talk and they see it as a benefit to both of them. Deal about issues that are both concerned, the environment, arts, any interreligious issues. So find stuff that you can talk about that you don't feel you're a traitor to your cause, and both society feel it's very, very important. Like 3 minutes, so I'll tell you a little bit, why are we cared at? What does that whole thing has to do with us here? One of the things I found in my studies is that a majority of the leaders in the Middle East, and again, I mentioned the Middle East, and it's probably true for other conflicts as well, but I just studied the Middle East, so I know that, are studying in our campuses. A majority of the leaders in the Middle East are educated in Western campuses, most in the United States, some in Europe, and some in institutions in the Middle East that are European or American. They come here, they study here. As I just explained, they have a lot of issues to get together, to work with each other, a lot of challenges where they are. They come to our campuses, and what do? Nothing. Or even worse, we allow them to be not involved. As I said, my study is 70% of the Middle Eastern leaders said they had nothing to do with each other on the campus. They didn't talk, they were apolitical, or even worse, they only would mobilize in their own little cliques. So we export the conflict. In an environment like UC Irvine, and we are really famous for that, which is a good and a bad thing, I guess, we are exporting the conflict, and we allow people on our campus who might be the future leadership for the Middle East as well as the United States, taking care of the Middle East. We allow people to be separated and segregated and do not do what we know works best. So our job here is to bring people actually together, educate them better, help them to connect with each other, have them becoming links that really connect their societies who are not doing it at the right time. This should be our vision and mission, and because I only have 2 minutes left, I'll make a jump. And that was kind of the backdrop for me to found an organization called the Olive Tree Initiative. The Olive Tree Initiative was founded in 2007, as I said, exists at 6 UC campuses. And the idea is to bring student leaders, pro-Palestinian, pro-Israeli, people just interested in the Middle East, together in an intense studying environment, research environment, where they study together, they learn together, they dialogue together, they challenge each other, and then they work together to the outcome of a trip every fall, where we go to Israel, the Palestinian territories, Jordan. We stop in Washington, visit the White House, and meet the leaders, meet the people in control of the society, religious leader, everyone, and have them ask questions and really get involved really intensively about their own conflict. And because it's a mixed group, obviously they have a lot of disagreements, but they learn to deal with that. They learn to speak a language that will communicate with each other what's really important. They learn to face issues of explaining towards each other what their own narratives are and what they have to do. It's a tough, tough work. We're called traitors. We're loved, we're hated. It's like the conflict itself. But it's one of the things I always say at the end of the day. I never dreamed of going to academia. That's why I said at the beginning, you can be an academia and an activist, of seeing so much change happening and being able to do that. And our alumni are amazing. You can ask me more how they changed the world already now. This program is very young still, but we have extended, just come back from Turkey, Armenia, so it's not just about the Middle East. We were just dealing with another conflict. And hopefully many of you are inspired. Go to the campus and get involved and influence people who are involved in conflict, interested in, and apply these basic messages and mechanics of peace building. That's very, very important. And talk to me more about it later if you would like, and give you more ideas of how to bring change, and hopefully see many of you at UC Irvine and some other campuses. Thank you.